yet. When it started, because I'm 10 minutes from Stone Mountain. When it started where I was, I mean, it was pouring. I mean, pouring. All I kept saying in my mind is, I'm glad it's raining now because it should be over with and dried up by the morning time. So, yeah, man. Wow.
The charged ionized particles is what create the rain. Because we were swarming with intelligence, just like the bees were swarming around us. We were swarming with intelligence on top of that mountain. We was the one that was pulling that magnetic energy here.
Yeah, wow. This is good, y'all. Reality is getting good. Reality is getting interesting. I hope y'all enjoying yourselves, having a good time with this. Remember, this is just a dream anyway. So there's nothing to get too stressed about, regardless of what's going on in your life. It's just a dream, family. But let's have fun while we dreaming and really try to understand this and figure out what our purpose in this dream is. Somebody asked, did we see the minor Bizel dude there? Yeah, Tigo.
Yeah, salute to Tigo. He was in the building.
Tigo was there. Tigo was there. He was there. He got videos all over Instagram. Go to his Instagram. You'll see all his videos on there. But let me show you this real quick, B. What you think about, when they talk about our powers being activated? One thing I noticed on the internet, on social media, is a rise in videos. Oh shit, where did it go? With dudes from jail, right? So dudes is from jail, and they doing the card tricks. Have you seen any of these?
Yeah, I posted one maybe like a year ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's a bunch of them on there. I just see this one recently. Now I don't know if they real or not, but dudes that was locked up before told me, yo, I seen them do that shit before. That shit is real. They swear it's real. Now the one thing, dudes that's locked up in prison, they don't have the distractions we have. Give me your thoughts on this influx of videos coming from the prison showing brothers doing these magic tricks and having things levitate.
Because one thing you got to understand about when you're in a state of tranquility and you go in monk mode, that means that you don't have external distractions basically manipulating your frequency.
Right.
If you notice, you know what I'm saying, when a man is at his best when he's in prison or if he's in the army, he's working out, he's reading, he ain't having sex. He's not draining his sexual energy, because the sexual energy in itself is the apex of his spiritual gifts. That's the only way you can go from lead to gold. When you go from lead to gold, that is the gold elixir to activate the magnum opus to where you become a god, because that gold elixir is honey. It's the same thing. It's connected to the energy of the bee. So like I said, when you're in a state of solitude and you're in a state of tranquility, that puts you in alignment to activate the powers within you, because you're not manipulated by outside forces.
I could imagine how powerful we'll be, BDEL, if we just learn to turn our internets or our phone, put our phones down for a little while, man.
Right.
Like, wow, man. I've been practicing silence, tapping into silence and stillness a lot this year. So sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is just shut the hell up. Yeah.
But so that's why sometimes you gotta, go through a linguistic fast, because that's how you leak out energy. You start talking too much, and talking too much, you start to think too much. You leaking energy everywhere, and it keeps you at a low vibrational state. So sometimes you gotta fall back and just be quiet and just be still and just feel. Right. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is just shut up.
Well, that's facts. That's facts. None fancy about it. Just be quiet. Most a lot of time. All right, so BDEL, let's get back to the bees real quick. All right, so beekeepers all over are complaining that their bees are dying off. Why are the bees dying off? I'm sure a lot of people will say this or that, but I want to hear what you got to say. Why do you think the bees are dying off, my brother, right now?
Because of the corporate infrastructure that's coming from the male trees, that's going to stagnate the energy. Because one thing about bees, they create a protein that's coming from an extraction process from pollination, and they carry that larvae over to the female trees to where it creates a form of produce. So like I said, there's no type of cycle, a part of the ecological systems now, because of the patriarchal energies that's connected to the corporate powers. Because this is why I was telling, I did a workshop at a Red and Blue Bills, bookstore. I was saying, because of the matrilineal and the patriarchal energies, it's a part of your tribe. Salute to everybody. Salute.
I appreciate it, man. And salute to you and salute to your tribe, because they've been coming over here, clicking up, linking up, showing love and support. The comments, like everybody been showing nothing but love. There's been a few stragglers coming with the BS, but I've been handling that accordingly. We don't give that too much energy or light, but we definitely appreciate all the ones coming with the light, coming with, the positive feedback, coming with just the love and support, man. And, for some I've seen was a common one was like, yo, brother BDELL is a breath of fresh air. So I'm like, yes, sir, I agree. You know what I mean? Because there's so many things that is right about the work, that you're doing, and so many other brothers, you know what I mean? So it's like, I want to focus on that versus the wrong, because I had to share with somebody yesterday, I think, it's like, there's enough division going on in the world. So we're not going to do is have any division going on here. We're going to keep it united. We stand, divided, we fall. We're going to roll till the wheels fall off. So that's how we're going to do it in these Ashe streets.
Most definitely.
Yes, sir. So with that, bro, you just dropped the bomb. I think it was like Thursday, Friday. I don't know what day it was, a few days ago. The shift. So I got a chance to dig into that one, and I really wanted to kind of pick up, where you left off in regards to not just the end times and the reset, but also with a lot of these landmarks or megaliths that are really, really crucial or critical locations for the planet Earth. One of the things that I saw that you went deep into was Mount Shasta, and how that's kind of like the chakra of, of the planet. So I've heard a lot about a lot of extraterrestrial activity that's going on around Mount Shasta as well. I've heard there's been a lot of that. And then also, of course, the people who have the experiences where maybe they teleport, they astral project, or they have visitations from, spiritual beings, etc. So can you kind of dig into some of the significance of Mount Shasta and how these historical and, landmarks play a major role in what we're seeing during this great shift in this reset?
Well, the Seamount axle is also in convergence with Mount Shasta. Now, Mount Shasta is the embodiment of the root chakra of planet Earth. So that means that as far as like the Kundalini awakening, it is acclimated and corresponding to the genetic format of those who's tapped into the carbonatic energies that's hitting the planet. So as we were talking about in the last interview, we were talking about those neutrinos. So those neutrinos is able to alchemize themselves through the solar flares. So when those solar flares hit, it gives a piezoelectrical frequency to that root chakra. So also the Seamount axle, that is where the underground volcano is at. And we all know that the volcanoes are basically the pimples of planet Earth. And they found a whole bunch of eggs there that comes from a different species. Because one thing you got to understand about, there's different layer systems when it comes to Hollow Earth, because it takes you to a different dimensional reality. But it's not only subjected to, mind science technology. It's also acclimated to different ecosystems that's inside the planet Earth that has different bodies of water. Because one thing you got to understand about how everything that was constructed in the inception of time, everything in the beginning points of creation started with the photon hydrogen atom, because the photon hydrogen atom creates electrons, electrons create elements, and elements create molecules, and molecules create organs, and organs create organ systems. And those organ systems have a different ecosystem that is acclimated to that ecological system, whatever, as far as like geographical areas inside Earth, or they got different bodies of water. So the same thing actually translates in real time when you're talking about these energy points that sits at the root chakra where Mount Shasta is at, right? So that means that, like I said, it's, it all corresponds with, Hollow Earth. It all corresponds with the Kundalini circle, because we are in the 9 year. And the 9 year is the embodiment of a snake year. So that means that the Kundalini awakening is going to start where Mount Shasta is and where the Seamount axle, right on the demarcation line of Oregon and California, right? So when those neutrinos is coming in, that is activating planet Earth. So like I said, it corresponds with the human body. So that means that we're supposed to not overspill our cup of Hermes. Keep that cup full, right? Because the sexual fluid in itself is the cosmic fuel to activate the Merkaba to where you're able to escape the Metatronic overlay.
Yeah, that okay.
Mhm.
You wrote a whole damn book with that response, but now
Wait, and I forgot another thing.
huh?
You also had the black sun in that geographical area in that time of 2017 when they said they had the solar eclipse, because that was a judgment eclipse. And that judgment eclipse is what created the ancient Alph symbol, what is also associated with the anarchy symbol and the sigil of the Antichrist. So that means that the reset corresponds with the judgment that starts at the apex of solar cycle 25 when you put that sigil system over the geographical areas of the United States government.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now I got a lot of different questions, but I'm gonna definitely pick my spots because I want to maximize this time. So with that, can you kind of get into the significance? You got into it, but can you go just a little bit further into the significance of this number 9? Now, 9 is a very divine number. We can talk about the 9 ether. We can talk about the Ened from ancient Kemet. You know what I mean? Like we can talk about, we're going to go into the Orisha pantheon with the Orishas. It's the transformation, with Oya is symbolic of the number 9. So when we're talking about what's happening now, especially this year being 2025, which is numerically a 9 year, how does that all tie into everything else, from a numerical and, as you would put it, what is it, gematria perspective?
Yes.
How does that all tie together?
So when you're talking about the number 9, 9 is a representation of completion. It's the completion of a cycle. Because when you look at the precessional circle of the equinox, it's said that the Draconian star constellation was working in harmony with the patrilineal system of the lunar cycle, right? So now you're having a shift in the frequency. So when you have a shift in frequency, that means that the shifting process happens by way of the alignments of the constellation. So it transmutes from the Draconian star constellation to the star Polaris that is in alignment with the Aquarian age. That brings you right back into the galactic center. So that is basically the embodiment of the completion of the cycle, the seculum of a cycle that was facilitated by Shaitan when he had rule over the planet for 6,000 years. So since that dominion is up, now we must go through a reset, and that reset happens by way of the celestial alignments that corresponds with the numerical components of everything that takes place on the planet when you're talking about the binary code system of the matrix, because numbers are also associated with interstellar vortex portals because numbers contain a frequency. So the number 9 denotes the fact it's a form of rebirth. Like I said, it's a form of resurrection. So in the 9 year of 2025, that is associated with the serpent, which is the Kundalini serpent fire that strikes the pineal gland. So when that strikes the pineal gland, like I said, it resurrects the carbonated man and the woman on the planet when you're talking about the original people who have prokaryotic cells. And those prokaryotic cells work in harmony with mitochondrial DNA that's tether connected to the prokaryotes, which is the first organism in the universe.
Yeah, boy. I love it. And before I go to the next phase, there's one last thing I would like to hit. If you can kind of break down in the symbolism between 9, is also the 9 ether with our hair. Those who have the kinky, curly, nappy hair that coils up towards the sun, versus those who have the 6 ether hair, which goes down to the earth. But I saw on a clip that I don't know if it was on your page or you was on somebody else's show where you was talking about a lot of people attribute only the 9 ether hair for people who have like froze or who have locks and things of that nature. But you also broke down how you can even look at the waves, people who have waves, how that even correlates to 9 ether as well. Can you kind of like touch on that before we move forward?
As somatic frequencies, when you look at my waves, I got waves in my hair. So the somatic vibrations have a certain octave vibration that corresponds with the 2 elements, which is silicone and carbon. So that means that it's highly magnetic. So it has a positive electrical frequency that contains a kinetic energy. So the same thing actually corresponds with dreadlocks or, locks or whatever. It's one of those things where, when you look at the inception of time, the hair follicle is also connected to the energy of trees, because we had trees so big that it was going outside of the firmament, right? So that means that our power, which is our hair, was teleconnected to these trees, because that's where we was able to activate the epikinetic body, because the epikinetic body helps you pull out information from the epigenetics when you pull out information for the subconscious mind and you upload it into the neurological cortex.
Oh man, I love it. And you know what's funny? I was I think it was either our show or another show I was watching, but even like when you look at trees, right, like palm trees. So this T-shirt has the picture of a palm tree, right? And shout out to John Jacques Dessalines and Toussaint Louverture, the two generals from the Haitian Revolution, right? So if you look at this palm tree, it kind of reminds me of the phase I'm at in my locks. Like, you know what I'm saying? The beginning phase, it looked like a little tree. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's dope how art imitates reality from nature's aspect, also to, you know what I mean, from the humanoid, connection aspect. So that's dope. That's real dope. So now when it comes to all the different areas where there's a lot of different activity that's going on, I know you had the diagram of like how the A goes across the United States, right? And how there's a lot of different types of like what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of different activity and motion that's going on in a lot of these different areas because of where they're situated on the fault lines and things of that nature. Where does Arizona play a role in some of these things? Like when you talk about the Grand Canyon, because I saw a post online, I think I just saw it today, but I don't remember who it was, but it was like some big crafts out in Arizona somewhere, I guess that service. Did you see that online anywhere?
I haven't seen it, but I know that's where the Cascadian Seduction Zone is at. So there's an interstellar vortex portal in that area, so that's why a lot of people say, oh, you can get to Africa through the Grand Canyon, but they don't ever give an explanation why. The reason that is because it's in alignment with the Milky Way star constellation, which is basically the epitome of the galactic center. So that's why in the inception of time, when you had the moon broke off, that's where it created a form of fermentation to the point where it was extracted from plutonium bombs. So where you have when you understand the inception of time, it talks about how Nibiru, when you're talking about the mothership, they have their own ecological system. It had its own solar system, basically. It's autonomous. So they shot one of the suns where the Grand Canyon is at. So that's where the inception point of where the black sun started to revitalize and mend the planet back together. Because the moon and planet Earth worked in synergy at one point in time. So the moon that we have in our solar system right now is basically the external hard drive of the planet Earth. And it's a quantum satellite, and it's a artificial celestial megastructure that is being weaponized to control the energy and the frequency and the vibration of humans on the planet. So the moon, it talks about it in Japanese folklore, how they told the moon into our solar system, the dragon, because the dragon is also associated with the draconian. The draconian is also associated with the cherubim when you're talking about archonic forces. So, I mean, there's many different layers to look at it.
Right. And that's another thing. I think we might have tapped into it or touched on it, but we didn't really go that deep into it. I don't think is like these archonic forces. So I remember having a conversation with another brother. I can't remember which episode because they all running together now, but I remember talking about the differences between creator gods and ruler gods. So when you speak about the archonic forces, right, can you kind of break down for us? Because some people, especially the people who's only been exposed to this channel, like in regards to you and your work that haven't, been a subscriber of your channel, there's a lot that you have on there and there's a lot that we covered the last time. But can you kind of break down the differences of these archons and the difference between a creator god and a ruler god in regards to who and what they are to what's happening now?
Okay. Well, from a biblical standpoint, when you're talking about archonic forces, it talks about how when the devil, he took Jesus on Mount Sinai, he said, I will give you all of this. I will give you the world. So when you're talking about the creation of the world in the inception of time in the book of Genesis, it's not talking about the creation of the universe. It's the creation of a simulation. And that simulation is being controlled by archonic forces who mimic the energy of human behavior to control them. So that means that they don't have the ability to create. So they mimic humans who have emotional intelligence. Because one thing, the reason they don't have the ability to create, because they don't have that emotional energy to alchemize the emotional energy to where it's able to materialize and create something in the future. So that's why I said they need us. So that's why everything within the system is an energy extraction. That's why you got to go to work. You basically stuck in a 1260 artificial time analysis mechanism. You're stuck in a 1260 time loop that's based on a recursive time loop trauma system. So that's why I was saying, like, as far as like artificial intelligence, it's actually corresponding with the archonic forces who is controlling humanity, but now it's happening by way of the technology. Because one thing about archons, there's a different nomenclature title when you're talking about Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth, his other name is Electro. So the electricity of oscillating signals that's working in tandem with the technological radiation is able to travel and basically mimic human behavior. So even when you're talking about parasites, like I said, parasites are basically tracking systems for the Archons to control humans. Because like I said, they need us to control, or they need us to create this simulation. They don't have the ability to create by themselves. So that means that, like I said, the simulation is basically the epitome of the fact that we're stuck in a firmament. That's why when you're talking about in the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 5, it says that Satan separated the intergalactic waters from the third dimension. So that's why they talk about in the book of Genesis to create the firmament. The firmament is a controlled quarantine simulation. And that's what it uses. They can't create anything outside of that paradigm. Like I said, that's when you get to the apex of the mental plane. So this is why you have a manipulation of technological devices, because the firmament is tether connected to the electrical grid, and it's connected to all these ley lines to block out the energy. Now they want to put another damn golden dome over the planet, right? Or just over the geographical area of America. And the reason that is because they know that the Schumann resonance spike is starting to speed up in vibration. So it's going from 7.83 megahertz frequency to 13.13 megahertz frequency, which is the Queen Mother seed. So that means that the restoration of the matriarch is happening by way of the activation of nature. So you got all these coronal mass ejection. These are the ancestors that's coming back and activating these chakra points where you're talking about Mount Shasta. Because if that volcano erupts, that's going to be 10,000 earthquakes that's going to trigger. That's going to activate the seven thunders. And the seven thunders are the seven bows, and the seven bows are the seven forms of destruction when you're talking about the Great Tribulation period.
Yeah, boy. Yeah. And okay. So 7 is another number that has a lot of symbolism and a lot of great attributes to it. So if you talk about like the seventh heaven, the seven chakras, the seven major musical notes on the musical scale, the seven major colors on the color spectrum, you know what I mean? Like the 7 days of the week, all those things. But then also you have the 7 layers of the inner earth, or to get to the inner earth. Does any of that kind of correlate and play a role as to when we like travel within, and like say if you want to go into a deep meditation and you kind of got to start with your root chakra and work your way all the way up through the crown chakra, does any of that play a role in how we're able to connect with the Schumann resonance, and we're able to connect with the information that's being streamed and beamed down from the neutrinos, or the information that's coming from, you know, the sun and the black sun, all that? Does all that kind of correlate together in regards to us being able to elevate our frequencies and to be able to astral travel and astral project, as well as elevating the resonance of our, you know, internal, or I should say auric or etheric body energies or frequencies?
Yes, because when you're able to tap into the extrasensory perception, which is where you get your intrinsic abilities such as clairvoyance and kinetic energy, or being able to read minds, you know, levitation, all this is activated by the gamma radiation, and that gamma radiation activates right knowledge. So that means that it has the ability to create those positive electrical crystals in the brain to where you become a god. So even in ancient Hinduism, they say that Shiva is the outer manifestation of, Krishna is the outer manifestation of Shiva, because Krishna is a representation of Christ, and Shiva, when you break down the etymological roots of the word, it means 7. So that means that 7 is also the embodiment of God. So it also talks about, a resurrection process too, by way of, mind science technology. So even when you look at the inception of time, it's also talking about creation. So this is why in the More Science Temple, we hold up the 7, right? It's based on, plant, animal, protoplasm, man, mankind, cherubim, and seraphim. So those are 7, cycles of creation that created everything by way of the activation of carbon, because carbon is the building block of all civilization when it's all amalgamated with the ether to materialize, physical reality, the circle of life. So that's why I was saying, like the Alpha and Omega, when you look at the ancient Hebrew Tav symbol, it represents creation and destruction. That's why I said 9 is the embodiment of the ending of a cycle, because something has to resurrect from it. And that's the resurrection of the indigenous people. So even when you look at the Denver airport, monoliths inside they got these things. It's showing you it's showing you the destruction of those that was cursed with leprosy. So that's why they show you the leopard being down, but they have the resurrection of the phoenix that's acclimated to the indigenous people. So that means that time period, as you have the resurrection of nature, you having a resurrection of a certain people that's connected to these land masses. That's what's taking place right now. So they're going to tell you every time about the symbolism.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm glad you mentioned the Denver airport, because that was something I wanted to bring up on the last one with you. It kind of slipped my mind in regards to all the other stuff we was talking about. But there is a whole lot going on that's attributed to that Denver airport. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about it having a entry level or entry point to the inner earth, the underground tunnel systems, the underground bunkers, and all those things. Can you kind of share and tap into like what that particular airport is hiding, or what it's a cover for, or what it's there for? And then also, if you could share any insight or any knowledge that you may have, based upon your research as to what's going on from like the dark side or the shadow government aspects of that airport.
Denver, the reason that's a very an important place to the elite and the plutocracy, the reason that is because that's going to be the new capital when you're having a shifting of land masses. They even showed you in the movie, in the TV show Paradise. That's where they started to, transmute all the minerals and all these preservatives to, having these cave systems that was connected to the Denver airport. So like I said, that's where they talking about the Emerald City in the Bible, right? So even though it's kind of like it's on a perceptual level, it's talking about the macrocosm and the microcosm. So the macrocosm of, the Emerald City is basically talking about there's going to be some type of extraterrestrial spaceship or mothership in that area. That's what they said that the Crystal City is going to rise up, because I believe there's an Emerald City in Colorado. But also it's also corresponding, talking about the activation of the pineal gland when it's able to dematerialize from calcification. So when you're talking about, the pineal gland, that is Emerald City. That is basically the connection of the sphenoid bone when you're talking about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, boy.
So it's able to crystallize. So it's in connection with the pituitary gland and the pineal gland. So that's also, in the embodiment of the Emerald City as well. So like I said, a lot of these stories in the Bible is actually corresponding to the context of the human body, but there is an actual Emerald City that they talk about in the Bible, which is the actual city that's in Colorado that's connected to the Denver airport. But we're also the Emerald City as well when you go through a crystallization process.
Yes, sir. Now, when you're talking about all of that with the whole process of the crystallization process, and then the pineal gland and, the pituitary gland, all that, where does the Barthany gland?
But yeah, the Bathari gland.
Bathari gland. Yeah. Where does the Bathari gland play a role in this? Because I know all that's connected, and some people may have never heard of the Bathari gland. I heard of it, but being a student of Doc, is how I learned about it and researched and studied it. But can you kind of share with us how that all ties in with our powers and the access to the abilities that we have, or that we lost due to us not having access to that Bathari gland?
Well, when you look at the cuneiform language and ancient Proto-Semitic language, it tells you that the Bathari gland is also esoterically connected to the hippocampus layer of the brain. So the Bathari gland, when you break down the etymology of the word and you get to the matrix of it, it means a different space and time. So that's connected to your higher abilities when you have the activation of the hippocampus layer of the brain, because they both work in tandem. So the hippocampus layer of the brain, in the inception of birth, when you go to these westernized, pharmaceutical organizations and you go to their facilities when you're born, they inject PCP inside the hippocampus layer of the brain that creates the holonomic brain theory. It's basically putting encryption over your neurological faculties to where, they're basically stopping it before you're able to tap into it. So they do all those stuff in the inception of birth. So they, that's why, as far as like their pharmaceutical industries or whatever, it actually goes against who we are on a neurological level and on a, genetical level, because it only corresponds with their synthetic forms of, how they carry themselves in their dietary systems or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And then even like with the utilization or the usage of both, hemispheres of the brain. So like me, for example, I'm ambidextrous because there's very few things I do. I guess technically I'd be considered left-handed because I write with my left hand, I eat with my left hand, I fight with my left hand, I shoot with my left hand, but everything else I do right-handed. I play basketball, football, baseball, bowling, like, what I'm saying? Everything else pretty much I do with my right hand. But I do know that there's some sort of correlation between people who are able to train their minds or who are just naturally ambidextrous by using the left and the right hand, because then you're activating both the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. So does that kind of play a role into like this whole thing when we're talking about the crystallization and the ability to time travel, astral project, or, just tap into that inner self? Does that all correlate to what we're talking about with the crystallization and the access to the Bartholin gland, as well as the pituitary and the pineal gland?
Yeah, because, the activation of the crown chakra happens when you have the activation of the neuroendocrine transducer. So it transduces from a carbonated state into a crystalline state. So that's what we also call the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone is the pineal gland. When it's amalgamated with those neutrinos that we were talking about, because when you look at, when you're talking about Noah's Ark, because like I said, everything in the Bible corresponds with, the original man's, structure. So when you're talking about Noah, when you break down the etymology, it means mind. When you're talking about archangels, but those archangels are angles of light, and those angles of light hits the mind, which is neutrinos. That activates, the philosopher's stone in the form of crystallization. So that's what we talk. You're really just talking about, spiritual metamorphosis, where a human becomes God in the Aquarian age, basically. That's what you're talking about.
I love it. Shout out to Conscious Queen 84. She said it's the only time I've been able to relate to somebody scientifically breaking down the literal biological truth of existence. Yeah, that's what we're doing too, and we're gonna continue to do that. So with us doing that, I know there's a lot of things going on with nature and with the planet, especially with, I think it was in Oregon, we were talking about the that underwater volcano. But also, can you kind of tap into these, what was it, 1,000 eggs that they found that they discovered? What was all that about, them eggs?
They were saying that, it was actually 2 million. So, they found 2 million eggs, and they said it's coming from an unknown species. So just, just by my logical assertion on that, those could be a Leviathan eggs, because volcanic eruptions, they can contain a certain loosh and sustenance to where draconian reptilians or archonic forces is able to feed on that loosh, is able to feed on that sustenance. So that's why when you look at, a lot of trees around volcanoes, that happens, the reason that is because they become a lot more greener. When just everything in nature tells you about the cosmic clock, it tells you what time it is. So anytime you see any type of intrinsic growth that is, connected to a form of nature. So a lot of the trees around volcanoes or whatever, they're a lot more greener. They're a lot more intrinsic when they're about to activate. That's because it contains a energy of carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide activates that, that energy underneath the planet that's connected to those volcanoes. So it's kind of like the same process. It's like, the reset in itself is just, tapped into the fact that the earth is going through a rebirth. When a woman's pregnant, she's glowing and things of that nature. So the planet is actually doing the same thing. That's why the trees is, the sun is shining brighter, the green, grass is greener, trees is greener, everything is starting to activate.
I love that analogy because we got a lot of females in the house tonight, and I know every female and a lot of brothers who either have children or married or, has been in a relationship with a woman during that time frame. But yeah, everything increases. Like their hair grows faster. I believe the nails grow faster. The skin shines brighter. Everything is heightened. On a whole, like not even just an esoteric scale, like on a whole physical and spiritual scale, everything is heightened. And you have some women who, I know this for a fact, like I think even like my mom, but I know there's other people and other women who are hairdressers where they can tell if a woman is pregnant just by them touching their hair. Like they can feel the difference in their hair follicles. Yeah, I've heard of that. I bet you somebody that I know, I'm not the only one that's heard of that before. Tribe, if y'all have either experienced it or someone who has experienced that. But yeah, women can tell if other women are pregnant when they're doing their hair or doing something with their hair. I can't tell you what the whole, like how they're able to do that, but I know that's a real thing that I've heard, you know.
I wonder if that's the reason why they probably have the activation of that X gene, because the X gene is what turns you into an X-man, X-woman. Like I said, when you understand the inception of time, when you're talking about the genetic mutation process of the man and the woman, because when you look at the X chromosome, it's actually, you know, a genetic mutation of the man. So what I'm basically saying is that the man is a genetic mutation of the woman. So that's why the Y looks like a broken X. Yeah. So the activation of the X gene. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, the activation of the X gene is the activation of the X gene is actually, you know, talking about, you know, your intrinsic abilities. The you know, the so-called black woman or the indigenous woman, she's the original being on the planet.
I sure.
Somebody had called me. This took me off the screen.
Oh, okay. Nah, I see you loud and clear on my end, man. We're good. But yeah, that's definitely a real thing. So I've seen it. I've heard of it, and I've heard people who have shared with me that, you know, that happens in regards to like the women and being pregnant and things of that nature. But when it comes to those eggs, where do they find those 2 million eggs at?
They found them at the Seamount Axle in Oregon. So it's actually in the same area where you have Mount Shasta. It's just water.
Wow. That's I'm curious as to like what that could be. Like they just appeared out of nowhere. Like how long has it been since they've been discovered?
It's been about like they've been talking about it for the past 2 weeks. Yep.
So it's all brand new.
Yeah. So those, like I said, in my opinion, those are Leviathan eggs.
And what is that?
Leviathan is a serpent, or it's like
I know about Leviathan, but what are the eggs? So you think that the serpent actually had eggs and like laid them?
What I'm thinking is because they don't know where it came from, and they're giant eggs. That's where they found them. You know what I'm saying? They found them at the Seamount Axle, right at the apex of the root chakra of planet Earth.
This is crazy.
And that's also the same area. If that volcano erupts, you're going to have over 10,000 earthquakes that can activate every fault line in America. So that's why I said it corresponds with, you know, those 3 solar eclipses, the solar eclipse from 2017, 23, and 24. So the Ring of Fire solar eclipse was on my birthday on October 14th of 2003. So you also got the Ring of Fire geographical area right where the Seamount Axle and Mount Shasta was at, and the same place where the Black Sun was at. Not a coincidence. Not a coincidence. Wow. So because, like I said, just even when you're looking at, you know, from a spiritual metamorphosis standpoint, when you're talking about the activation of the chakra points, we all know, like I said, your sexual energy is your cosmic